The Rock made his return to Memphis on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown, and he had a lot to say, taking aim at Cody Rhodes once again. But there were a couple words he said, too, that just keep slipping out of his mouth that are going to be important moving forward, I think. And if you watch this channel for the first time, we've done a lot of videos breaking down all the segments between The Rock and the Bloodline, Cody Rhodes, all of that on the road to WrestleMania 40. We know WrestleMania is Saturday. It will be The Rock and Roman Reigns teaming up to take on Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. Then WrestleMania Sunday, Cody versus Reigns for the title. Will it be a normal match? Will it be Bloodline rules? We'll find out in terms of the finish on WrestleMania Saturday. But again, this was all about The Rock. And that's kind of been the point when you look at the way some of these segments have played out here. And it was The Rock all by himself to start things off in this particular promo in the ring. And there were some things along the way here that I think we definitely have to read into. And maybe some people think, hey, we're reading too much into this. Maybe it's going to be very simple. I think WWE knows exactly what they're doing now. I think they know the reaction from the fans and how people are reading into every little tiny thing. And we're going to do that here because it's fun. Wrestling's supposed to be fun. And there's a lot of those kind of things in the storyline that we can sink our teeth into. So, again, the main theme here is that this is all about The Rock. Like, he's by himself. And keep in mind, Paul Heyman, Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa were at the building because Kayla Braxton was the one who came up and scared the living daylights out of Paul Heyman because she wanted to get a question in. And then that led to, of course, Jimmy Uso accepting the challenge for Jey Uso. But again, there's the disconnect. If you see the previous video we've done here on the channel, it was talking about the distance that The Rock always seems to be at when he's in the ring with the Bloodline. The Rock's on this side, or he's in the center. You have the Bloodline standing off to the side on another, or they're just kind of a little bit further away from him. And so we pointed out there's a clear distance between them, whether that means trust issues, whether that means something else. That's one of those things that raises a bit of an eyebrow to, I guess, pun intended, with The Rock, to kind of pique your interest a little bit. So the fact that they're not in the ring together here, and I know WWE to add the tiny details in, you can do all that to explain why maybe they weren't and all this other stuff. I get it, but I don't think it's something that we can just completely leave out there to mean absolutely nothing because they all are part of the Bloodline, right? But yet, for some reason, this was, again, about The Rock. And what else happened here in this particular thing? Well, he's in Memphis, so you've got a lot of people chanting for The Rock, right? We're not getting the Rocky sucks or die, Rocky, die. We're not getting any of that. We're getting people chanting for The Rock, and that's what it's become. It's become much further along, and this is kind of the reaction. You see this on The Rock's face. Yes, The Rock makes these kind of facial expressions and all this other stuff, but he's fine with this. He's accepting the fact that the people are coming back around, right? They enjoy seeing The Rock. No matter what city he goes to, they love hearing what The Rock has to say. He has become the center of the WWE universe. And I know we can pick apart, maybe should that have been the case because you have him coming back, maybe overshadows all this other stuff. But that's the point, is that continually The Rock is overshadowing everything involving Roman Reigns. And we pointed out in previous videos before, why did The Rock have to basically acknowledge Roman Reigns? Remember, we put the little visual of Roman Reigns with that big sigh of relief after The Rock gave him the hug. Why? Because he needed that. He was starting to sense that, okay, I need to be acknowledged, and the fans aren't acknowledging me. I'm having to ask them multiple times now to acknowledge me, and it's because this has all happened since The Rock came back, right? So Reigns needed that for his ego. He needed that to kind of feed the insecurity that he had. And so that's continued along in terms of the story, and now The Rock is getting all the love. The crowd response is better than Roman Reigns at this point. He has become the star, and I don't think that's going to work for Roman Reigns' ego. There's something else I don't think that's going to work for Roman Reigns' ego. Remember, who welcomed The Rock into the Bloodline? Who introduced the newest member of the Bloodline? It was the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. He allowed The Rock into the Bloodline. But is this once again becoming a nation of domination scenario where The Rock is simply bigger than the group? He's overshadowing everything that's going on, and I think there are tiny aspects of that we have to look at as a hint as to where this is headed, which, again, I don't think is a big surprise anymore. We know we're going to get a Rock versus Roman Reigns match somewhere along the way. We don't know exactly when it's going to be. Maybe it's WrestleMania 41. Maybe it's before that. but they're clearly planting the seeds in everything we see for The Rock to kind of play up this larger-than-life aspect, but also larger than the bloodline, larger than Roman Reigns. And here's something that I don't think Roman Reigns is going to be very happy about, because something The Rock said during this promo was very, I think, clear. There was also something else he said we're going to bring up in a second that may not have been as clear. But here's the line that The Rock said specifically, and you see it on the screen here. That belt is going to stay around the waist of my cousin, Roman Reigns. Now, The Rock has said this before, right? Like, he's referred to Roman Reigns as his cousin before, and that's not exactly anything new necessarily. But if you think about when this happens, it comes after Reigns has already asked The Rock to acknowledge him as his tribal chief, right? And Rock did. And what did Rock say, though, when you think about why he did it? That's what family does. Nothing more than that. The Rock acknowledged Roman Reigns because that's what family does. So in a sense, is he twisting that to say, should Roman Reigns be the one that's acknowledging The Rock, right? Who is now dubbing himself the final boss of this whole thing. Is the final boss bigger than the tribal chief? And everybody's talked about kind of the difference between the tribal chief and the high chief, all this other stuff. Those are all little things you can add in. But the fact that The Rock continues to use those two words to refer to Roman Reigns, my cousin, to basically say, hey, this guy's not above me. He's just my cousin, right? That's not going to sit well with the tribal chief and his ego. And remember, think about it again. Roman's the one who welcomed The Rock into this whole picture, okay? He's the one who welcomed him to the bloodline. He gave him, it was basically, whether you think there were intentions there or not, he's the one who let The Rock into this huge entity, right, that has become the biggest thing in professional wrestling. He allowed The Rock back into this, and all The Rock has done since then has essentially made it about himself. It's been about The Rock. The fans have made it about The Rock. Cody Rhodes has even made it about The Rock. None of this is about Roman Reigns. We've talked about it. He's kind of the sidebar, right? He's basically The Rock's cousin. That's how it's felt, and I know there's a slippery slope there. You don't want Roman to feel like an afterthought. But if that is the story, is that Roman is the afterthought, then it's okay, because you can make that work, and that's what eventually leads to the downfall of Roman Reigns, because either there's paranoia, either there's something else, right, that drives Roman into this next stage of his character, to basically either he just has a full meltdown because he cannot take the fact that he is not being the one that's acknowledged as the highest leader of the bloodline. Instead, it's The Rock, the final boss, all of this. And by the way, let's be honest too. You guys know how much is WWE going to hit us with that tagline of final boss versus tribal chief. Like, it is the ultimate WWE marketing ploy that they can set this up now as the final boss versus the tribal chief. And again, it's perfect, because if you really think about it, it works out well, right? So, and I think, again, you go back to the reasoning. The Rock has said that the reason he does the things he does is because that's what family does. And pointing it out, maybe it's not what he wants to do necessarily, but it's because that's what family is supposed to do. And it's almost, in a sense, sometimes like he wants to teach Roman Reigns a lesson, to say, hey, this is what family is supposed to do. You're not doing it the way that family is supposed to do it. And I think there's something else we have to read into that when you think about how many times he said that over the past little while, right? Almost like, you want to teach him a lesson again on how to be the real tribal chief or the high chief or whatever, right? And I think now you kind of, again, look at the dynamic to where the way they're going to set this up. And I want to point out one other thing real quickly, because people pointed this out on social media and such. But, it's like we have to be careful sometimes, because we can read into everything that The Rock says and feel like it is 100% that situation, and you have to look at it and say, okay, there's reason behind that. There are also accidents that happen in promos, and you don't know if it's exactly something that was supposed to be there or not. But there was a point in this promo that he did on this week's SmackDown where he goes to pick up, the belt, right? He goes to pick up his belt, and he says it ain't going to be the Universal Championship. He's pointing it out towards, as he's taking aim at Cody Rhodes' mom, basically saying, Cody's talking about how he's going to hand his mom the title, all this other stuff. And he says, it ain't going to be the Universal Championship. It's going to be this right here. And it basically saying it's going to be this belt right here. And he's looking at the leather strap, of course, the belt that he has. And then he says, Mama reigns. So the crowd doesn't react to it all. They start chanting for The Rock to whoop Cody, all this other stuff. And Rock said it softly to the point where you probably couldn't even hear it that much. But he did say it. I think he didn't mean to say that. I don't think he meant to say Mama reigns. I think he meant to say Mama Rhodes. But as we know in this storyline, you can never read too much into it because we got to have some fun here. And hey, if they go back and say, boom, it was planted right there the whole time, he said Mama reigns, then so be it. But I don't know if that was intentional, but I just did want to point it out because a lot of people have brought it up. When you do kind of quote the comments that The Rock said in this promo, he did say it. He did say Mama reigns instead of Mama Rhodes, but something else that I think we have to look at. So what did we learn from this segment with The Rock on SmackDown? I don't think we learned anything we didn't already know, in that we know this is the direction they're heading towards. It's going to be Cody versus Reigns this year. You guys know my thoughts on whether I think Cody's going to finish the story or not. But now I think we're looking at a situation where there's no doubt they're planning everything every single week. The Rock speak. They're adding those tiny little potential details that we can read into after the fact once one side or the other turns, and again, whether that's going to be The Rock. This has been a plan for The Rock all along. Has he been kind of the one who's been ahead of Roman Reigns from the beginning? Because remember, too, I know it's easy to forget this because of everything that's happened since then, but when The Rock came back, he specifically asked, should he sit at the head of the table, right? And we know there's a very good chance that the storyline direction, creative, all that, veered off course since then based on how things unfolded. At least that's the way we think, right? But when The Rock came back, the whole reason he came back was to ask that question. Should he sit at the head of the table? Whether they were going to do that match this year or not, we know there are a lot of possibilities in play. But we know they're going to do the match at some point. That's the plan. And so if you keep adding all these different things and it's becoming more and more about The Rock, people are saying, Rock is big brothering Roman Reigns. And when he refers to him as my cousin, he didn't say, the person that's going to keep the belt or whatever the specific quote was. I've got to pull it back up here. That belt's going to stay around the waist of my cousin Roman Reigns. He didn't say that belt's going to have to stay around the waist of the tribal chief Roman Reigns. He said, my cousin Roman Reigns. So he's big brothering him, right? The Rock is saying, you think you're a big deal? Let me show you what a big deal is. And that's why he is the center of attention in every single promo they do, every single segment. It's the stuff he's doing on social media. The Rock is doing the stuff on social media, and what is it doing? It's only making him a bigger deal because people see this. All right, great. All the great reaction to it, right? He's cutting these long promos. All the time that goes into it, it's about him. That's time that could be spent going into people acknowledging Roman Reigns, people acknowledging the tribal chief. But instead, they're spending all this time watching The Rock. They're spending all this time listening to The Rock talk. And it's that simple, is that The Rock is now bigger than Roman Reigns. And I think ultimately that is how we're going to get this big storyline development. We all assume it's going to be at WrestleMania 40, but there's plenty of ways you can go with this. And I think the fact that The Rock continues to use those two words, my cousin, towards Roman Reigns, he may have said he would acknowledge him as the tribal chief, but maybe he only did it because that's what family does. And now, again, The Rock, back to his old ways. The fans are cheering for him. And again, this is what you see when he starts to see the fans cheering for him. Almost like the People's Champion knows that maybe they know that, hey, this is The Rock they've always loved, and they can try to boo him. They can try to say Rocky sucks, all this other stuff, but it's still The Rock. And people are going to go wild every time they see him, every time they hear from him, and that is not going to sit well with the tribal chief, Roman Reigns, and his ego as we move forward on to the next step, which will be now a face-to-face next week on SmackDown. What will happen? I guarantee the bloodline will be with Roman Reigns. Will The Rock be there? So see, it's all starting to come together and how all of this is playing out on the road to WrestleMania 40. So again, guys, I appreciate you watching as always. As I mentioned, check out the other videos on the channel. Lots of fun stuff. Already breaking down all these segments. You can tie them all together now, see how everything is fitting each week as we go along, what The Rock has to say, what Roman Reigns has to say, Cody Rhodes. How is it all kind of fitting into the story of the bloodline as we head towards WrestleMania 40 and the opportunity for Cody Rhodes to finish his story. Let me know what you thought of the segment with The Rock this week on SmackDown, And let me know what you think about all these little details that we keep seeing. And do you think that the tribal chief will be pleased as he was watching The Rock refer to him as his cousin? And what will that mean for the eventual implosion of the bloodline?